Esteemed audience, Bangalore Sahodaya Schools Complex Association presents a panel discussion on the strategies to hone appropriate skills to build competencies for future readiness. May I request Ms. Shanthi Menon, Core Committee Member, BSSCA, to do the honors and kindly introduce our panelists to the audience.
Thank you, Anita. Good afternoon to the audience and welcome to this session, which is possibly a post-lunch session. But this promises to be engaging and invigorating, for such is the topic of discussion and the fact that we present to you the intelligentsia of thought, Professor Madan Mohan Pant, former Pro-Vice Chancellor IGNOU, Dr. Sahasrabudhe, Chairman, All India Council for Technical Education, and Dr. Johari, Director, Education Advocacy, Microsoft. I welcome this distinguished panel on behalf of BSSCA. For we, this community of educators, build the future through the work that we do with our students. In this dynamic global space, it is imperative that we commit in our schools to a plan that nurtures high potential individuals. Global competence through discerning and divergent thinking, technological literacy, cross-cultural communication skills, appreciation of diverse cultures, along with soft skills of flexibility, adaptability, and agility, which will help this young generation in transcending the global boundaries. With this context set, I take great pleasure in inviting our first speaker on this distinguished panel, Dr. Anil Dattatreya Sahasrabudhe. Dr. Sahasrabudhe, Professor of Mechanical Engineering at Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati, and currently Chairman of All India Council for Technical Education. Dr. Sahasrabudhe has held several important academic, research, and administrative positions at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, Tata Consulting Engineers, Northeastern Regional Institute of Science and Technology at Arunachal Pradesh, and at Guwahati IIT. He also served as Director, College of Engineering, Pune, prior to taking on mantle of chairmanship at AICIC. He has been bestowed with several awards, which include Maha Entrepreneur Award 2011, Jeevan Gaurav Puraskar from MIT World Peace University, Pune, Mahatma Gandhi Leadership Award from Indian Achievers Forum and CSR Times. Sir, we look forward to your valuable recommendations on how to groom our students with appropriate skills for the future. Over to you, sir. Dr. Sahasrabudhe. We are unable to hear you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I think it was on the mute mode. Thank you. Yeah. Namaskar, प्रोफेसर मदन मोहन और डॉक्टर विनी जौहरी जो को पैनलिस्ट है हमारे साथ में, होनिंग ऑफ अप्रोप्रिएट स्किल्स टू बिल्ड कॉम्पिटेंसीज फॉर फ्यूचर रेडीनेस, इस विषय पर बोलने के लिए कहा गया. सो आई थिंक इट्स वेरी वेरी सिग्निफिकेंट एंड इम्पोर्टेंट इन द लाइट ऑफ बोथ the demographic dividend which India has to enjoy and has to do it, number one, and number two, the new National Education Policy 2020 has several elements which will make it to be made possible. That's enabling things that are there in this particular policy. Both are very, very significant. But third, very important thing which has also happened, unfortunately, is that 2020 also marked the presence of COVID-19, and because of that, there were several challenges. And how do we address these challenges? How do we take ourselves forward? I think this is very, very significant and important in the light of what we are going to discuss in terms of the future readiness. This future readiness has been an issue for quite some time. look back to all the surveys of CII, NASSCOM, FICCI, and in general industry bodies, as well as many associations keep saying that students who graduate, they are not employable. They are not employable because they are not ready. Now, what is that readiness has been always differing from industry to industry, association to association, from year to year, depending on what is the situation that exists in the sector itself in terms of job market. To reflect back in the late 90s and the early 21st century, the first decade, few years of the first decade of that is from say 95 to 2005, you get any degree in engineering, you will get a job in IT industry because there was huge demand. And that time, no industry talked about employability. Everyone was getting employed. And forget about those with computer science and IT degrees, but civil engineering, metallurgy, production, anyone, including some of those who did BSc and with little bit programming language were also on board. So I think that is where it was. But today, the same industry says that these very same students from the same institutions coming out are not employable because the nature of jobs are completely changing. Today, someone is able to write simple code in some of these languages like C++, etc. is not good enough. You need to have knowledge of AI, IoT, machine learning, deep learning, robotics, 3D printing, blockchain, augmented reality, virtual reality, cloud computing, cyber security. These are the domains where the new jobs are there in the large scale industry, and as well as those who wish to start their entrepreneurial journey in terms of starting startups. You need to know these hard technologies. So that is number one. Number two is other aspect, even in that period and this period. In general, the industry says that many a times a student may be knowing the knowledge of the subject, but the ability to express, that is what we call it as communication skills, is lacking. And that's why they want a good communicator in terms of what you have understood to be expressed. I think that is another area which has been there. So now moving forward from just communication skills, what is important is all variety of soft skills, or what we call today as life skills. It is in terms of team building, time management, how do you interact with people, how do you develop leadership and take the work from others. I think there are several factors which are actually sociological, psychological, which are other than the technology itself. I think these are also to be understood. So similarly, you take any domain, for example, commerce, they must know certainly banking, they must know how to write account books, ledgers, but how do you interact with people? I think people to people, that is the most important thing. Unfortunately, during this COVID-19 times, our communication has been only through the platforms like this, on WebEx or something like this. But I think someday, as soon as possible, we must come back to our normal. And that is what is very important. So future, when we talk about future, is one is unknown and is uncertain. In what we call in management parlance, many times they use the word VUCA word, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But unless we derive ourselves in terms of change of attitude, change in the way we can adjust with people, adjust with the new technologies that are emerging, become lifelong learners, and have confidence that anything new I can master it in a short time. That is the most significant future readiness. Future readiness comes from that competency, that skill. Whatever today is required, certainly we have to learn in our institutions. But even what is not there today, in fact, many a times we say that we have to prepare students for solving problems which are not known today. The problems will come 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, using technologies which have not been invented as yet. I think that is what is all about education. That is all about readiness in future. And therefore, starting from CBSE, which has taken this initiative, Sahodaya schools, this is a very interesting, debate discussion where we want to create our people to be able to navigate through all kind of hurdles and difficulties in the future. And that future readiness will come through a lot of life skills which are important. And that's why I would like to reiterate one of the very interesting things which AICT has been doing in terms of few initiatives. If the time permits, I would like to continue for a few more minutes. And the number one is the curricula. The curricula need to be upgraded continuously. You cannot sleep over them, say that what is there in the 20th century, I will teach in 21st century. So then otherwise industry readiness will not happen. And therefore, continuous revision of curriculum is the first thing. Second thing is those teachers who are recruited 10, 20 years back, they themselves have not learned. How can we make them lifelong learners? How can we train them in those new areas of development, emerging areas, emerging technology? So the second aspect is that, and under Atal Academy, we have been continuously training. And in fact, I'm very happy COVID helped us that instead of physical meetings where we used to train only 50 faculty members because travel cost was involved, accommodation was involved. For 5 days, if you have to keep people, huge expenses were there. Today, on an online platform, full day meetings we hold, workshops we hold, and the expenditure is absolutely almost negligible, number one. And the number of people who can be admitted is more than 50, 100, 200, 300. So we went up to even 500,000, but then we said the effectiveness is not there. So we reduced it to 200. So instead of 50, now we train 200 in every workshop. 4 times, and the cost is four times less actually. So it is 16 times efficient business actually that we are doing. Thirdly, today the experts can be drawn from anywhere in the world. Earlier, they had to travel and be there in that institution. Now a person from US, from Canada, from Japan, from Australia, Singapore can also give workshop training for our faculty members. And we have trained nearly 80,000 plus, and our target is 150,000. And this is all in the last 5 months I'm talking about. So it's an enormous use of technology, and this is what we need to learn. How do we leverage use of technology? We already have Swayam courses, which are allowed to be taken as credit 20%. It is increased to 40% now. New courses are coming in. We are translating these courses in 8 Indian languages, subsequently into many more languages. I think empowerment, that is most important. From a person in a rural area to a tribal area, how do we empower that person to become educated, to increase gross enrollment ratio from present 27% to 50% in the next 10, 15 years? How do we develop intradisciplinary, extradisciplinary activities? I know that is very important. Cross-disciplinary research. These are all things which are there in the policy which we were already advocating and doing. But the most important thing which I said, future readiness, when you said, we have a program called a 3-week student induction program. The first 3 weeks for the first year students, there are no classes. So when I say this in many of the meetings, the students will start clapping. They were very happy that there will be no classes for 3 weeks. But the next sentence is that period of 3 weeks will be more intense than your next 4 years in the engineering colleges. What we do is make you get up in the morning at 5:30, take to the playground, workshop. There are a lot of jogging, running, sports, sweat you out, and then after breakfast, lots of discussion sessions, taking you around to the industry nearby, taking you to the geographically, historically important place nearby. I think a very intense, even screening of movies, getting some people around, and then the holistic development of the student begins there. Collaborative movement begins there, making students realize that someone has some strength, whereas I have that weakness. Someone else has that weakness, but I have that strength. And how do we collaborate with each other and help each other? I think that is the most phenomenal thing which is required in today's world, working in collaborative mode, and that the seed is sown in that first 3 weeks. And the next 3 weeks, 3 years or 4 years will become very, very absolutely smooth for both students and the institution heads. Because even if there are some problems in the institution, they will not raise issues of problems and create strikes, dharnas, but they will try to solve the problem. They become problem solvers rather than problem creators. I think the connect, the teacher-student connect, the connect between institute and the student, I think that is what we are achieving through this. Then internship, which is made mandatory so that students will get to go to the industry for about 6 months, either 3 summer vacations of 2 months each, or 1 full semester. I think these are the areas where industry connect will happen, industry problem solving will happen, readiness will happen for the today. But most important thing, the first 3 weeks of student induction program would have given them that confidence that I came to this institute, I didn't know so many things, and I can learn it, I can do it. That I can do it is most important. And today when the Prime Minister says Atmanirbhar Bharat, I think Atmanirbhar starts from self-Atmanirbhar. We have to be Atmanirbhar in terms of confidence and the competencies that are required, skills to be built. We should be holistic, And if you do that, I'm sure we will be not only helping ourselves, our families, our society, our nation, but the whole world. Sarve Janaha Sukhino Bhavantu, and as well as our whole saying that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, whole world is one family. I think we can give this message to the whole world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sahasrabudhe. Takeaway from, it's amazing that you all are doing the 3-week induction for students so that you're already orienting them to a life skills program, which they will have to sustain over the years of technical education. The takeaways from your message has been wonderful. Of course, curriculum needs to be upgraded regularly. It is so critical for us, especially now that we are looking at honing future skills. Students today are not employable as of now, or they're not ready to be employed as of now. Quite true about that. The second takeaway, of course, is that teacher training needs to be teachers need to be upskilled. Very important aspect, and I'm glad that there's so much of work being done on that front. It is true that technology is available, and so everybody has access to experts globally, which is something that we should all, I think, grab at. You also spoke about, apart from getting students hard technology oriented, getting their soft skills, especially communication skills, honed. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Sahasrabudhe. I move on to our next speaker. I have pleasure in introducing Professor Dr. Madan Mohan Pant, former Pro Vice Chancellor, IGNOU, to share his thoughts with us. Professor Pant has a doctorate in computational physics with a professional degree in law. After a long innings of 50+ years as an academic researcher, a lawyer, and an educational entrepreneur, he is now exploring new pedagogy, technology, and curricula for the future. His special focus is on mobile WhatsApp-based lifelong learning, transcending traditional education, and blending personalized and social learning. He has been faculty at MNIT, Allahabad, University of Western Ontario, Canada, and at IIT Kanpur. He was Director Computing at IGNOU and a Pro Vice Chancellor. Some of his current educational initiatives are introducing quantum physics principles at school, preparing teachers and learners for the age of artificial intelligence, and the 3-2-1 learning. Over to you, Professor Pant. We'd love to hear from you.
So thank you very much for having me here. And I'm actually very pleased that we had Dr. Sahasrabudhe before me, because he laid down many of the issues which are facing us. He's given lots of examples, lots of details, and as we said, we all agree with that. And I want to talk a little more on general principles rather than very specific things. Now, the first general principle that I want to say is, and when he talked about the story of engineers being so much wanted a couple of decades ago and not wanted so much today, is in a statement of mine, which I like to say that the problem of the 21st century is that the skills acquired over a lifetime become obsolete in an instant. And this is why you were very valuable, and he talked of lots of skills, including bookkeeping, accountancy, and so on and so forth, but completely irrelevant straight away. This happened with ordinary computing. It got aggravated with artificial intelligence and machine learning, and will get another challenge with quantum computing and quantum technologies which are on the horizon. And we're very lucky that we have Vinny Johari here from Microsoft, because Microsoft is leading initiatives in quantum computing in a very unusual way. All others are doing a certain kind of quantum computing, but Microsoft is hedging its bet on something which is called topological quantum computing, and for which they have a mathematics field medalist with them for several years and so on. So one of the first important point is that the skills of a lifetime become obsolete in an instant. And the only way you can immunize against it is to build on what Alvin Toffler said a long time back. that you have to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And Alvin Toffler said this in the 70s, but it did not have a ring of urgency to it. Now I want to add a fourth word to that: learn, unlearn, and relearn fast. Because you have to learn these things very fast. Anything which was there 5 years ago or 10 years ago will not be relevant in another few years. I have been in the field of computing for a long time. It can be called me a prehistoric person. I first started getting into computers in 1967. And then we had punch card and magnetic tapes and huge rooms, and we had to go all the way to Bombay, that famous fame of that two books, Emperor of All Maladies and Genes. And he says that modern medicine is just about 100 years old. Till then, it was all empirical, trial, error, people's belief, and so on and so forth. What I'm saying is, before our eyes, in this decade, we'll roll out the youngest science, the science of learning. There you'd use MRI. You only get areas which are lit up. But with quantum sensors, you'll be able to see every neuron. And many of the devices that you use are going to become much smaller, much efficient. In fact, some people said very nicely that a few years ago when you said quantum, it would look something weird. Tomorrow, quantum will become an adjective for superior. So anything, just like we said, digital is superior to analog, quantum will be superior. And then, of course, you talk about green hydrogen and you talk about whole genome sequencing. You've already heard that CRISPR editing has been around and they got a Nobel Prize this year. What I'm trying to say is that in education, there is already a word for this called heutagogy. So if you know, there are three ways of teaching: pedagogy, andragogy, and heutagogy. Pedagogy is when you teach very young children for the first time in school, etc. Andragogy is when you teach grown-up professionals, continuing professional education, and Malcolm Nowell that coined this. And heutagogy is teaching a self-directed learner. So I'm not saying teachers will no longer be relevant. Teachers will help a self-directed learner to learn, which is a different method. So teacher is very important, and this is going to be the decade of education. There's another very important cognitive scientist called Guy Claxton. He coined the phrase learning power. And he says learning power is like muscular power. It is the ability to learn anything. And Jean Piaget also said that. So basically, knowing what to do when you have not been taught what to do. So what I'm trying to say is that we must use these technologies not to replace the traditional classroom, which is very inefficient anyway. The thing we expect is personalization to learn in a very short time. And I'm telling you now why educators will become more important. See, we see an educator as somebody where there is a prescribed curriculum, maybe by AICT or somebody, and he will teach that, and then you will get a BTech or something, and then nobody will value it. But actually what the educator does is a behavioral change. There is nothing you can do. Now I'm saying, let us apply the principles of first principles to figuring out what you should learn. So now, one of course is learning to learn and self-learning. You have developed that ability, but then what is worth learning? How do you figure out what is worth learning? Will you go by what your traditional peers said, your elder brother, your father, your grandfather, that this is basic, you cannot go without this? Or would you go, what is the fashion? Like, what is that, white hat junior coding or Baiju or whatever? Or you would like to look a little into the future and say, let me think for myself. And I would urge all people to do a bit of thinking for themselves, because nobody knows what to do. And I will give you three elements which you must look at to find out what is going to be important and worth learning in the future. The first thing is the frontiers of knowledge. Now, let me explain that. I am talking about people who will make a future based on their education and knowledge. There are many illiterate people, uneducated people who are having a glorious future and maybe probably doing that. I'm not talking of that category. I'm talking that you build your future on education, learning, and knowledge, and being on top. In that case, the first thing you need to know is, where are the frontiers of knowledge? What is it that the new knowledge is being discovered. Now, one of the methods is you read all the reports of various universities, research institutions, what they are doing, and so on and so forth. And many of them publish these reports from time to time. That will give you an idea. And as you know, there are things like citation index, this, that, which will tell you that this research work has been cited by so many people and so on. But the gold standard is just look at the Nobel Prizes. So there are Nobel Prizes which is being awarded since about 1900 in physics and chemistry, physiology or medicine, literature, peace, and there is something associated with which is economics, which was not in the original thing, but is announced around the same time in economics. So with this, you know where is human knowledge headed. And it will take a long time, but when Röntgen got the Nobel Prize for X-rays, X-ray became a big technology. So many others, many Nobel Prizes in physics have translated to technologies, including 2016 Nobel Prize has led to what I'm talking about, topological semiconductors and topological services, which Microsoft is planning to use for their work. So the point is, one is, this is where the frontiers of knowledge are going. Second thing is to look at the patent landscape. In which things are patents being made? Because theoretical knowledge is awarded, can be given, you have an equation, you get appreciation for that. But it is only when it is patented that there is an invention around it. So therefore, look at the patent landscape of the various fields, and field here is shifting from the physics, chemistry, maths, computing to the biological. Today, the biological frontier is bigger. Many of you may have read that AI was used to solve the protein folding problem. So tomorrow's engineering will be based on protein engineering or tissue engineering or muscle engineering or whatever. So patents is the third is, see where the investments are being made, by the government or by venture capitalists. And this is what will give you a fairly good idea that this field is going to see the light of day, and it will happen. You will see today to companies like Microsoft, Google, IBM, all these people have clear-cut plans. By 2023, we want to do this. By 2025, we want to do that. They may not achieve all of it, but you know where the opportunities lie. Even at the heat of American elections, so contested, a person like Trump, on 7th October 2020, they laid down a plan for future of quantum frontiers in the US. First time they said we want to create a class of professionals called quantum engineers, quantum technology. As of now, Australia, University of New South Wales is the only known program, bachelor degree in quantum technologies. Roorkee, IIT Roorkee, in collaboration with Microsoft, has a 1-semester course on quantum technologies. So what I'm trying to say is this will tell you that this is what you have to be ready for. And I will share with you a thing with which I'm almost directly associated, I know, but so I am very much part of the IIT system. So I have a PhD from Roorkee University, which is now called IIT Roorkee. I was a faculty member in IIT Kanpur for about 10 years, as a member of the board of management of IIT Delhi for about 6 years. So what is the one unique thing about IIT? I don't want to say even the one big thing about it. And what it is, see, engineering education was there in India long before. There was Guindy College of Engineering, which is the oldest college in India, probably the oldest engineering college outside this thing. There was Roorkee, there was Banaras. There were about a dozen or so engineering colleges. But IIT transformed engineering education. And let me try to say my one-sentence transformation. It transforms slide rule wielding engineers to computer programmers and so on and so forth. So thank you very much and all the best for a wonderful thing that you're doing.
Thank you, Professor Pant. I liked your quote and I liked what you added on to the quote. Learn, unlearn and relearn and do it fast. I think that is the essence of what really is important for our students for the future. And of course, keeping their eyes on what is required for the future. And of course, fostering computational thinking and, the quantum, getting students quantum ready is so essential for all the future, for us for the future. We also, I like to focus on the science of learning and how learning can be self-directed, and a teacher is only a facilitator for it. Thank you for all of that, and I think there was a huge amount of learning from your message to us today. I move on.
Thank you. All the best.
Welcome, sir. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Vinny Johari, Director, Education Advocacy, Microsoft, to you. Dr. Vinny Johari works as educational industry expert at Microsoft Corporation India Limited and has been an educationist. She leads and manages strategic engagements in education and focuses on K-12 for digital transformation in education. Her contributions have won her many awards at Microsoft, just as her role as regional lead at HP Labs Open Innovation Office India has. Her work has impacted millions of teachers and students on teaching with technology through managing projects at scale. She has authored 13 books published in the domain of services, innovation, and technology management. She has over 100 papers published in leading national and international journals. It's an honor to have you speak to us with your ideas on building competence for future readiness among students. We look forward to hearing from you, Dr. Johari.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Menon. It's a privilege to share this platform with you, with Professor Sahasrabudhe and Professor Pant as well. Congratulations for putting such a phenomenal program together by the Sahodaya group. I would love to share my thoughts on skilling for future readiness, and Professor Sahasrabudhe and Professor Pant has shared wonderful insights on skilling, on learning, on how to be prepared for future, the role of technologies, and what we need to do collectively as educators to prepare our future generation. So I'll share some thoughts built in the context, and also share some specific perspectives on skilling that we are undertaking at Microsoft with K-12 and higher education as well. So as Professor Pant and Professor Sahasrabudhe shared, we are at the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution, which is powered by technologies like IoT, cloud, quantum computing, IoT, and this is reflecting in so many ways. The first set of taxes will get are being performed by robots. We are talking of driverless cars. We are talking of carbon neutral economies in the world. And all of us as institutions and as individuals to adopt and adapt ourselves to the new ways of working, collaborating, and managing our lives. The business models are completely being disrupted, whether it is telemedicine, electronic payments, e-retailing, online education, and even conducting online inspections for accreditation of schools or universities. The tech is being embraced in unprecedented ways, and that's a reality of our life. There is also a realization of leveraging tech. And the one big question that arises is how do we ensure that there is continuity of business despite the crisis, and how do we build competencies which enable us to do well despite all the challenges? There is also realization that we need to leverage tech in many ways, and also force us all on rethinking about our investments in conventional infrastructure. We also seeing that the new education policy 2020 brings in a strong focus on empowering students with 21st century skills, and the policy also mandates that every student should graduate with at least one skill set. It could be in any domain, but they should be problem solvers, they should be critical thinkers, and move away from the traditional rote learning. And also, this COVID-19 crisis has clearly shown that in future we'll have to creating more personalized learning scenarios. And different children have different skill sets, they have different learning requirements, and technology should be enabled that there is an equity of opportunity to acquire the skill sets. Microsoft as an organization is deeply committed to empowering the learners and educators to skill themselves and realize their potential and enable them embrace emerging technologies and partner in the journey for transformation. And skilling is multidimensional. It is not just about technical skilling or using a specific technology, but it is about building social emotional skills. It's about building empathy and kindness, building global citizens with great values, instilling happiness, because that spreads and builds up very different kinds of business and social relationships, having resilience and ever being in learning mode. A lifelong learner, I think, is the key to success. So as Professor Pant said, it's not just students, but as leaders, as teachers, everybody needs to hit refresh and rethink about what competencies should we add every single year, every single day, every single month, so that we stay relevant and enable our future generation to stay relevant as well. And just to give you an insight, Microsoft offers very unique opportunities for skilling students, teachers, youth, and professionals. Our approach is a 360-degree approach, so it's not just focused on one segment. And through every single program, we offer opportunities to develop critical thinking and social skills as well, and problem solving. For schools, for instance, we have Make Code opportunity. It's a coding open source coding platform where very young learners, they can code, they can conduct virtual science experiments, with the indigenous materials and build design thinking capabilities. We also have Minecraft. So just like you have Lego toys, Minecraft uses digital assets to create scenarios. So while you create, let's say with digital assets, you can create a smart city. Somebody could create let's say a Roman civilization or an Egyptian civilization. And you could tinker with colors, materials. You can do a narration or a storytelling, and all that can be recorded. A group of children can work together. So very complicated themes to teach that would be a challenge for teacher can be very simply taught by students creating those scenarios. So periodic table, you don't have to mug up atomic numbers and atomic weights, but through Minecraft and scenario creations, it could be something that you would never forget during your lifetime. And the best part is the code gets generated on the side. So it's a very intuitive way of learning design thinking skills, problem solving skills, and coding using a gamified approach. And I would love to share that even in remote, people say technology creates a digital divide, but in my experience over the last several months and years, especially during COVID, I've seen unprecedented ways how even in the remotest part of the country, students and teachers have embraced technology for meaningful learning experiences. So a school in Phagwara won the first award on the Minecraft challenge worldwide. And during this crisis, so it's such a proud moment. A school in Bangalore won the Asia Award for Imagine Cup Junior, where they used AI applications to segregate waste from a manufacturing plant. And these were just grade 7 to 9 students. So imagine for a 13 to a 15-year-old children who are learning to code can compete globally and make us feel so proud. That is there's so much talent in India, and if the right kind of pedagogical innovation is adopted, if new ways of learning and teaching are adopted, I think our future generation is all set to solve so many problems that matter to all of us, in our countries and in our geographies. Another area that I would like to talk about is that Microsoft has also created curriculum in public realm on AI. There are handbooks for teachers and students from grade 8 to grade 12, and they can use these applications such as facial recognition, whether it is voice recognition or creating secure systems, all of these to solve problems. So somebody could create a speech therapist for speech and hearing impaired, and using AI applications. And we had instances of students showcasing their work to Satya Nadella, and he was very impressed. These were like just 7, 8 grade students from multiple schools. Microsoft also has certification pathways. A little while back, it was being talked about teachers being facilitators. Having been an education administrator in higher education for more than a decade, I have seen the other side, like for teaching in higher education, certificate for teaching in higher education makes all the transformation on exposure. How do you teach students in groups? How do you act as a facilitator? How do you give a constructive feedback? How do you encourage them to think out of the box, initiate entrepreneurship, creating mentorship opportunities? So vital for their emotional and mental well-being and building competencies, enabling them to create, not just consume. So we have certifications for teachers, Microsoft Certified Educator program. And, Microsoft has this program of creating showcase schools, where these schools have embraced technology and have a vision on one-to-one learning. And every single teacher and the leadership is committed to change and transformation. And one of the key underlying criteria is that the teachers will get certified first. So we have instances of, let's say, DPS in Gurgaon, or Kamla Nehru School in Fagwara, or Bluebells International School, where we had just, provided some opportunity and mentorship to few teachers to get themselves certified. Now we have the entire school community going in for certified teachers, because hybrid learning is going to be a reality. And how do you systematically create 21st century learning assignments, assessments? So it's not just about teaching styles or pedagogy, but it's also be able to triangulate what you are creating, and that is relevant in the external world. Microsoft also provides, there are resources such as MS Learn that can be leveraged by the community, by teachers and students both. It offers more than 225 learning paths with videos, with assessments. You can map where you stand on your competency. What is it that you want? Do you want to be a data scientist? Do you want to learn to develop apps or AI? And there are more than 1,000 modules available. So customized pathways of learning can be created on Microsoft Learn, which is like free of cost. And if someone wants to get some process, and the trainings are aligned to 35 Microsoft certifications. And you can also opt for instructor-led training as well on the online channels. So very proud to say that we partnered with multiple institutions like NSDC to train 1 million girls from the underprivileged segment on technology. We have partnered with NASCOM and AICT as well, opening doors for skilling students and creating access to these wonderful resources. And, over the less than 2 years, there are more than 4 million users on MS Learn globally. So, and also on LinkedIn as well. So it's not just skilling, but creating the full circle and mapping your skill set to mentors, getting connected for job opportunities. And Microsoft is also initiating some pilots where customized career feedback can be provided to the students so that they can choose their career paths wisely and in accordance with their competencies. I would just like to stop here and say that sky's the limit. I think if one has the passion, one can almost learn, in any particular area, and every single day should be something where one has invested in building up one skill. And, I'm very inspired by a little girl child from Ludhiana. She's a student of one of our showcase schools, and she's a Minecraft mentor to teachers in Finland, Russia, India. And she also runs a YouTube channel as well on Minecraft and coding. She inspires lakhs of students, and she says, each one teach 10 and nobody will be left untouched and everybody will be skilled. So I think it's not just about our own self, but the little worlds around us. If we can empower and influence them, the whole world will be a radically very different place. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Johari. That is very, very informational. I think you are right in that there's a lot of potential in our schools and our students, and it only requires us to use appropriate methods to hone that. It's wonderful to know the various opportunities that Microsoft has created for students to hone critical thinking, social, emotional, and problem-solving skills. It's also very good to know that there are certification courses to aid students and teachers to upskill on the tech front and make them industry ready or make them ready for the future. Lovely to hear the kind of collaborations that you've heard, and I think that your little ambassador, who's now a trainer for all of various students and teachers, has been the most wonderful part of the learning that we had from you. Our chat box has got a huge number of questions for you. May I request, I can start with Dr. Johari herself. Dr. Johari, you spoke about honing socio-emotional skills using technology. While this may sound very paradoxical, could you throw light on how Microsoft tools help us in honing socio-emotional skills?
Yeah, sure. I think there are several ways. If you look at Microsoft Office 365, there are multiple, and there are a lot of apps that get integrated as well, which enable building social emotional skills. So Minecraft, through storytelling, building empathy, we have courses on Microsoft Educator Center, more than 70 courses. And there are courses with learning outcomes, how to institute social emotional skills, how do you institute empathy, how do you create happiness, how do you build that into your curriculum, how do you approach that. So on Microsoft Educator Center, so there are resources that teachers can leverage. I'll give you an example of an app called Flipgrid. It is an app that you can that can be enabled on a mobile phone. Let's say you want to, some child is very shy and is not very vocal and doesn't want to speak, like some people are more forthcoming, some are more shy. So let's say the teacher gives the homework, rather than give the homework in a conventional manner, like tell us about the flora and fauna around your house, or let's say the environmental situation around your house. The child goes, clicks the video and does a narration and then sends it to the teacher. So there is a place where all these videos get uploaded and the child expresses oneself beautifully. So despite not being open, you're providing a forum that is tech enabled. Likewise, somebody just wants to narrate a poem, doesn't want to speak in the class, all that is possible. Then through Minecraft, as I said, lot of powerful storytelling, reflections that brings out the best in children. And we have so many wonderful instances. I would say in Sun City, Gurgaon, I remember there was a child who graduated just a couple of years back. Her name is Anushka. I think she featured in Prime Minister Modi's Man Ki Baat as well. She was a child with special abilities, was on wheelchair, and she was the mentor to all the regular children in the school, and she was their coach, and she used to teach them coding and creating games, learning games through coding. So such, and I remember the earlier president of Microsoft India at Vellum Boys, we had an event and she made a presentation and she was an inspiration to more than 1,000 students who participated in the competition. So beautiful stories of ordinary children, but extraordinary contributions.
Thank you very much. So we have a question from the audience again, and may I address this to Dr. Sahasrabudhe? The question, it's not just a question, it's a statement also. Would it be wrong to say that assessment and evaluation of students are bottlenecks in implementing all the curricular and policy NEP decisions? Because as long as board exams are going to be as demanding and high stakes as they are now, not much change can be expected. Dr. Sahasrabudhe, you had something to say on that skeptic thought that is coming from a lot of us, I should say.
It is not skeptical, it is a reality. I think we have been focusing on rote learning for quite some time. While at the same time, we don't deny that some amount of memory-based questions are necessary, because we can't say that everything will come from Google and everything will come from Microsoft on the computer, and then only I will understand what it is wrong. So I think certain amount is certainly required to be in the memory. But what is significant and important is all question papers, right from KG to PG, they all are based on memory. Whereas the other abilities, which both, in terms of MMG also said, and Vinny said, is that of higher level of learning is to be tested and evaluated, which in many times we call it as Bloom's taxonomy based, evaluation, which means understanding whether you have understood that, you know it, but do you know that what is it all for? Then where do you apply? Can you analyze a problem and can you synthesize? Can you be creative? Can you be innovative in creating something new out of that subject which you have learned? Can you apply that subject matter to another area? You may be an engineering science student, but can you use biology in engineering? I think these are the issues which we are never testing them, neither in our entrance examinations nor in our normal board examinations or our university examination. I think AICT has done 2-3 things. Since others were speaking, I was listening. So certification of faculty members is important. In higher education, you don't require certification all these years, not just in India, but anywhere in the world. You do your masters, you do MPhil, PhD, and you become a faculty in higher education. We have implemented a 8-module program. Whatever our predecessors have both spoken now before me, that kind of a certification program where in 8 modules, the entire life cycle of a teacher, starting from the entry till the retirement, what all he or she needs to do as a teacher is been embedded in that. And this is for the beginners. These are freshman teachers. But subsequently, for promotions, we are developing newer modules so that they also get engaged in engagement with students themselves. We are having so proud about our own Guru Shishya Parampara and ancient system, but we are not talking to our students today. We have a class of 60 and 100 and you don't know the names of the students. How do you interact with them? I think that is very, very important, and we are trying to do that part through the teacher certification program. But at the same time, the issue which was raised about examination, we have an examination reforms policy, which is there in the website. You can see not only that we are conducting workshops, because many teachers said that you can say theoretically you should have questions which are analysis based, synthesis based, creativity based. How do we set such question papers? We are holding continuously workshops in engaging faculty, understanding how they can do it. And then some sample such question papers are already on the website. And we have appealed to others that if you develop something like this, please share with us so that we will have a better bank of such questions. Others will learn from your learning, actually. So I think this is how we develop the entire parameters of that, and what emotional quotient, social quotient, whatever we call, is also part of our 3-week induction program. This program is very holistic. It is not just merely, there is no class, as I said, but it is there everything else other than the normal academic classroom. And if you do that and prepare students, I'm sure the question which was asked is very, very relevant. And our national testing agency headed by Vinit Joshi is thinking about how do we have questions which are aptitude based for our entrance exams, and not on the basis of the knowledge of physics or math or chemistry, but how we test his aptitude and whether he is fit for engineering, whether he is fit for maybe social science or maybe psychology, may be tested and guided to take up that profession rather than coming here.
Thank you, Dr. Sat. It's good to know that there is a lot of thought being put onto that too, so that, exams just don't remain high stake. This is the last question we will take since we're running out of time, and I address this to Professor Pant. What is the advice to us on leveraging the power of data to hone skills, Dr. Pant?
Yeah, so I think the question is very appropriate. The answer is there because it's all a question of doing it. Now, actually, if you look at it, since online education became popular, the whole field called learning analytics came up. So just like we had traditional data analytics, the whole field of learning analytics and international conferences on this have been happening for the last several years. Now, as we get more and more data for these people, we will be able to get the kind of a persona that we are looking at of the learner. Now, marketing people always talk about the persona of their customer, and they try to build the customer's persona, and then things like Netflix and Amazon and everybody else who's there tries to respond to that. So similarly, once we have the learner's persona, and now you remember I said the science of learning. The science of learning will give you a framework that a learner's persona consists of these things. Just like in medicine, when you go for an overall medical checkup, you have so many things which are checked for. Hemoglobin normal, this thing. So you will have a whole persona of the learner, which will determine where he's good at, the kind of thing that we talk about. And then AI and related technologies will create a appropriate thing for both the social development, this thing. In fact, it is amazing that we have an education system where we don't look at this at all. And I say this to a lot of people, that when I was about 10 years of age, I undertook a battery of tests from a professional psychologist. In Allahabad, there was something called Bureau of Psychology. And at the age of 10 years, they gave me a report which has 2 pages about what kind of a persona I have. And it is very interesting that there they said, I will grow up to be an academic kind of a person, not a person who does real things, etc., etc. So it is quite interesting. And we should be doing this continuously, just like if you have a person, you go have an annual health check you have and so on. And a very important aspect of this is the cognitive development. So my report was talking more about how I am emotionally adjusted, how I am developing as socially adjusted and so on, because they said his marks in exam knowledge is already known from the report card. But how is he evolving as a human? So I think one of the important things, since you said, as we have more and more data about a person, and this is very critical. To me, this is the number one problem tomorrow. It is not about this thing. It is about, are you at peace with yourself? Do you have a purpose? Are you happy doing what you want to do? Are you willing to change? Do you have the resilience to change to what is required? Because everything cannot be to our liking. So very often we have both things. We have things which are liking and therefore we are naturally inclined to it, but things that we ought to do for which we need to be oriented and trained in a as reasonable manner as possible, as non-traumatic and something which doesn't lead to breakdown. But the total persona would be the important, and educators will be responsible for that. As more and more thing is taken by data and technology, the role of the educator will be to be the role model. I have no hesitation in saying I am deeply indebted to my teachers who interacted with me during my college, university, postdoctoral research, colleagues, and even remote mentors with whom I was just in conversation. And this is what is going to be the role of the educator. So I said educators will not be undermined. They will become more important, and all this data will help them give better advice. Because what happens if I don't have enough data, I am subjected to biases. Oh, if he studied in IIT, he must be very brilliant. Not necessarily true, right? So I realized that once this was what was happening. I was in some interview committee, and this fellow was from IIT, and he was doing very badly, and I was feeling unhappy. Then my other colleague on the board said, "But why are you saying on that day, that exam he did well? But why are you attributing he must be brilliant and working hard and doing everything?" So the more data we have, the better we will be able to learn. Just like in healthcare, the more data we have been able to improve healthcare. So the more data we'll have, the education or learning or cognitive development towards being a full human being. It is not just about being an engineer or a doctor or whatever. And why this is very important, and I want to say this because when Professor Sahasrabudhe said, he said starting job and this and retirement, actually I know a lot of professors who have earned pension for more years than they earn salary. So my senior colleagues in IIT Kanpur, they joined at the age of 40, they retired at 60, they are now 85 and more, and they have got pension for more years than they got salary. So you have to think of that longer innings. It is not just about getting placement or getting a job or whatever. It's a question of life. And the education for life will be important. I actually asked this in one of the schools of management I was invited for dinner. So they were saying all things. I said, look here, these people will tell you how about that you will get a good job after graduation, which you will get because you are young, you studied in a good institution, and you are going in an area where opportunities are there. Ask them, will you be of any use when you retire from your job? So anyway,
Thank you, Dr. Pant. I think the catchword was learning analytics, and I think it all ties back to what Mrs. Anita Karwal ji said in the morning about holistic report cards, which will be the future of, improving our whole education system. It has been an absolute privilege and a personal learning experience as your host for this very informative and enriching session. On behalf of Bangalore Sahodaya, I express my deep gratitude to each one of you, Dr. Sahasrabudhe, Professor Pant, and Dr. Johari, for your presence here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.